Hey everyone! Welcome to Update X24H, your go-to channel for the latest news, hottest dramas, breaking stories, and all the buzz from the world of entertainment. We're here to keep you updated, entertained, and always in the loop. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family, because here at Update X24H, we bring you the news that matters, the drama you love, and the stories you can't miss. Thanks for being part of our community. Let's stay connected, stay updated, and keep the good vibes rolling. They stood for the truth and lost everything. When Menglong's death shook the entertainment world, four actors dared to ask one forbidden question. What really happened? Their courage inspired millions, but the price they paid was far too high. This is not just a story about fame or tragedy. It's about how a single act of honesty can change destinies and challenge an entire system built on silence. In the wake of Menglong's mysterious death, an eerie stillness swept across the entertainment world, one that spoke louder than any official statement. News outlets went quiet, interviews were pulled, and social media accounts that once celebrated his kindness turned into ghost towns. It was as if a curtain had fallen, not just on a man's life, but on the truth itself. Within days, people began to sense that this silence was not born from grief, but from fear. Every post, every whispered comment seemed to vanish before it reached daylight. The industry had entered a collective pact of forgetfulness, an unspoken agreement that Menglong's name must never be mentioned again. Behind that heavy silence, however, emotions boiled beneath the surface. Friends and colleagues who had once worked beside him were torn between loyalty and survival. Some deleted old photos with trembling hands. Others stayed awake through the night, wondering if speaking his name would cost them their careers. It wasn't just an atmosphere of mourning, it was an atmosphere of control. Studios tightened their contracts, managers warned their artists to focus on new projects, and fans who tried to post tributes found their comments erased within minutes. The louder the public tried to remember him, the more fiercely the system tried to make them forget. Yet silence has weight, and it cannot hide truth forever. In that void of words, grief began to take on the shape of resistance. Small gestures, a candle lit, a quiet message shared in private groups, a single heart emoji under an old performance clip, became acts of defiance. People understood that remembering was now a form of protest. The hush that followed Menglong's passing was not peaceful. It was suffocating, like standing in a room where everyone is too afraid to breathe. And amid that suffocating quiet, something profound began to shift. The silence itself started to speak, of injustice, of fear, and of the deep longing to keep one man's truth alive. It was in that stillness, darker than any storm, that courage began to awaken. Courage often begins quietly, like a single flame flickering in the dark, fragile but impossible to ignore. When the entire industry turned its back on Menglong's memory, it was four people who refused to let that silence stand. They were not activists nor rebels seeking attention. They were artists guided by conscience, bound by friendship, and unable to accept the injustice that followed his death. Their courage did not roar. It whispered. Yet even a whisper can echo through walls built on fear. Xingfei was the first to speak, posting a short message that read, "He didn't deserve this." Just 6 words, tender and unassuming, but they struck like lightning across the internet. For those who already suspected something was wrong, her words were confirmation. The post vanished within hours, deleted without explanation, yet the impact was irreversible. Fans began to ask questions and the illusion of control began to crack. She had not accused anyone, but her truth, gentle and human, was more dangerous than any accusation. Soon after, Chungyao followed. Her voice trembled as she spoke during an interview asking, "Why is truth such a dangerous thing to say?" That question was her undoing. Her contracts were cancelled, her image erased from posters, and her name replaced in credits. She became the symbol of quiet rebellion, a woman punished not for lies but for honesty. Then came Zhang Yao, who posted a quote that read, "Courage begins where silence ends." It was a line meant to heal, yet it marked the beginning of his exile. Overnight, his face disappeared from screens, as though he had never existed. The final spark came from Zhu Jingyi. Known for her elegance and restraint, she shocked everyone when she broke her silence during a live broadcast. She didn't raise her voice. She simply whispered, "Some truths are buried deeper than you think." The studio went still. That whisper, soft as breath, became thunder in the hearts of those watching. It was the moment fear began to fracture. Each of them had acted alone, unaware of the other's courage, yet together they ignited something far greater, a movement not of anger but of remembrance. Their small acts became beacons of light in a world determined to stay in the dark, reminding us that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is simply speak. Integrity is often celebrated in words, but rarely in action. For Xingfei, Chang Yao, Zhang Yao, and Zhu Jingyi, it was not a badge of honor but a burden that came with unimaginable cost. When they chose truth over safety, the world around them shifted. What had once been familiar and bright turned hostile and cold. Within weeks, their careers unraveled like a thread pulled from a delicate tapestry. Projects were cancelled without reason, endorsements vanished, and the phones that once rang with opportunities fell silent. In an industry that thrived on applause, they were left to face an audience of shadows. The punishment did not end with public disgrace. It crept into the quiet corners of their lives, into their homes and families. Friends stopped visiting, afraid of being seen in their company. Letters went unopened, contracts unsigned. Privacy dissolved as journalists and unseen forces traced their every move. For Chang Yao, the blow was personal. Her younger brother was expelled from school after disciplinary review, a thinly veiled act of retaliation. Xingfei began moving from one apartment to another, frightened by the feeling that she was being watched. Zhang Yao disappeared from public view entirely, his absence haunting the fans who once adored him. And Zhu Jingyi, whose smile had once lit up screens, retreated into isolation, silenced by fear but not by guilt. Their integrity was their only crime. They had not lied, not accused, not fabricated, they had simply remembered. Yet in a world ruled by image and profit, honesty became the greatest threat. The industry that once celebrated their talent now treated them like ghosts, scrubbing their names from posters and replacing their faces in promotional footage. Still, they refused to surrender to bitterness. In private letters exchanged between them, they wrote about resilience, about choosing dignity even when the world offered none. They came to understand that integrity does not protect, it exposes. It strips away illusion and forces one to stand naked before truth itself. They paid with their fame, their peace, their sense of safety, but in doing so, they preserved something that cannot be bought or silenced. The right to remain human in a world that had forgotten what humanity means. Months passed. Zhang Yao was last seen traveling abroad. Fans think he's writing a book under a pseudonym. Chang Yao returned to her hometown, working quietly in theater, teaching young students about acting and ethics. Xingfei now lives in near-complete isolation, painting small portraits titled Echoes of Light. Zhu Jingyi was spotted in a temple, lighting candles for those who cannot speak. They no longer chase fame, but they have become legends of conscience. Because in a world that rewards silence, their courage became the loudest sound of all. Today, fans around the world continue to honor Menglong's memory, not through rumors but through art, kindness, and remembrance. Every drawing, every song, every tribute is a quiet rebellion against forgetting. The story of these four actors reminds us that truth has many faces. Sometimes it shouts, sometimes it whispers, and sometimes it simply survives, in the hearts of those who refuse to let go. Their careers may have faded, but their integrity shines brighter than any spotlight. In every generation there are voices that speak when everyone else stays quiet. Menglong's story, and the friends who defended him, teach us that justice isn't always loud, and courage isn't always rewarded, but it's always remembered. If this story moved you, don't let it fade. Share it, talk about it, and keep the conversation alive. Thank you for watching Update X24H. If you believe that truth still matters, please subscribe, like, and turn on notifications, so together, we can keep telling the stories that deserve to be heard.